My name's Paul. This is Ringo.
John.
It's John. George.
Good night.
He always stops in the line.
Come away with your fishy eyes. Fish eyes, mother land.
Okay, a little bit of a break out there. I wonder if we can go down to the field for Webster when he's going to report this time. So we wait what we can do. Oh, there's the light. All the lights are on the stadium. Now that says it's good. Good. Leaving now. They're attempting to, that may be a one-time. Okay. Take it away, Barry McMaster. Barry, you got it.
We'd like to thank you now for coming along tonight. Thank you, marvelous audience. Thank you very much.
All the lights have been put on in the stadium now. As you can see, they're getting piled up against the press barrier. A number of youngsters have been arrested.
It was something that had never been experienced in pop culture. It was a new sound and look that would change America in just 31 days. Almost 50 years later, the Beatles continue to be the most popular selling group in the world. Their musical influences can be heard in the recordings of thousands of musicians and musical groups around the globe.
The Beatles, one of the most electrifying names ever to hit show business. Here on Hollywood Star Newsreel is a dramatic, candid look at these incredible entertainers. Not for 1 minute will we try to explain this phenomenon, but here is the remarkable proof of what they did to Hollywood, a town that lives with the brightest stars in the business day in and day out. This is Los Angeles International Airport, besieged for hours with thousands of teenagers waiting for their idols. The arrivals of the Beatles' big Pan Am jet stretches their patience almost to the breaking point. And then it explodes.
The Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. The effect they've already made in America is hard to imagine.
You just started together and sort of blended in the group.
Crap. Crap.
Was it?
C-R-A-P.
No, it's a dice game.
The dice game.
A dicey game.
You thought it was something else, didn't you? You're a naughty journalist,
Let me
aren't
ask you
you?
this question. Yes?
Oh, you've seen the Stones, haven't you?
No, we do get haircuts actually, surprisingly enough. But it just doesn't.
Last night I had one.
You know, you notice when you've had a haircut, but
No lie.
you don't notice when we have. Well, most sneaky haircut.
We're just well groomed.
Yeah, but it's so corny when you say we're just good friends, isn't it? But it's true.
The airport authorities would like to close the thing down now. Oh, you all right?
As we're setting the scene, as we're going to talk about the 1964 Beatles American tour, there's several things that leading up to that I think are important to point out. One, obviously, at the end of '63, we have the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Oh yeah, that was a biggie.
That was a huge thing worldwide, obviously, specifically in America. So the mood of the country was, obviously quite somber.
But what the Beatles really did more than anything than lift us out of the doldrums was that they replaced the news of the Kennedy assassination. That's all that had been monopolizing the news for all those months, for 2 months, was Kennedy assassination. And if anything, they were a bright, fresh spot that replaced Vietnam and Kennedy assassination. But I can tell you, it really did make a difference for a kid. 11-year-olds now.
Absolutely. And plus, if it's going to consume the whole adult population, and of course the kids feel that. But then there's that brief
It was only
respite.
2 months. They came over.
Yeah.
It was 2 months later. They're in America. And it was really, really
It was
a
an emotional
big thing. It
healing,
was a big,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Big release in a way.
The Beatles have arrived in America. You might have heard little bits from that press conference they did in Los Angeles on Tuesday. Then their very first American date up at San Francisco's Cow Palace. After the Cow Palace, they'll be coming right here to Las Vegas to play Convention Hall. If you happen to miss them, maybe you can catch them up in Seattle or hop in the car, drive all the way to Vancouver, and then back down to the big show at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles on Sunday the 23rd. Well, here they come at McCarran Airport. Beatles have arrived. There's Paul, there's John, there's George, and Ringo coming up at the back. Want to remind you, they will be at Convention Hall. That is 2 shows, one at 4, one at 8 o'clock in the evening. Tickets are going fast. They're somewhere between $2 and $5.50 on the floor if you can find some. Don't miss the show. The Beatles in Las Vegas at Convention Hall. Keep it right here with the good guys, and we'll keep you up on all the details of this groundbreaking tour of the Beatles in North America.
Sneaking into the back door of their hotel, the Sahara, the Beatles are mobbed by their Las Vegas fans. This is going to happen at every stop along the tour.
What a concert. What a concert last night at the Seattle Coliseum. The band was on for only about 25 minutes. They went through 12 of their songs, including You Can't Do That, All My Lovin', Things We Said Today. Of course, the rockers like Roll Over Beethoven, Twist and Shout, concluding with Long Tall Sally. 14,000 of you were there. And if you can't get enough of the Beatles last night, you can get more of them today. Just head on down to Woolworth's. They've got a big sale called a Mad Fad Dad. You're going to get T-shirts, dolls, wigs, LPs, and 45 pictures, posters, and pins. Plus, they actually have for sale bits of the rug from the Beatles' room at the Edgewater Hotel. A rug that the Beatles actually walked on. You can buy a piece of that history in the making from right here in Seattle. The Beatles tour off from Seattle up to the Empire Stadium in Vancouver, then back into the area to the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. Keep it right here. We'll keep you up on the latest on the Beatles' North American tour. We love you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where are they? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay, now, can we have everybody please in this area?
You know, you've been asked about what you think about everything. What do you think about yourselves? What do you think about the reaction you get when you go to places?
Like the NBC or which?
No, just the ones on the table, fellas.
All of them, I see.
If you could use that one, and all tell us what you think of Beatlemania. What do you think of people, you know, that come out and go wild in front of you? You must think about it. What do you think about it?
We think it's good. Good.
Why is it good?
The thing is, because we enjoy it and people enjoy it.
It's happiness to
Happiness to all the people we bring you.
We used to enjoy going to shows ourselves, you know, and seeing the people we liked.
What kind of shows did you used to go to?
Rock and roll shows.
What did you used to like? What did you used to like when you went to shows?
Rock and roll shows we used to like.
We were in the midst of a discussion. They say they used to act the same way some of their fans do, and I would like to find out what did they used to go to that caused this reaction in them?
Rock and roll shows.
We used to just go to shows, mainly American artists visiting Britain. People like Eddie Cochran.
Do you classify the material which you use in your performances as pure rock and roll, or is it something else? And if it is something else, what is it?
Well, it's near
pure
enough.
rock and roll, only we write most of it. That's the only difference.
And if it isn't, it's near enough, you know.
Thank you very much.
Would you care to venture a guess as to how long you think your success as the Beatles might last?
No. No. Oh, it's gone. No.
I asked Elvis a couple of months ago.
Just a moment, please.
I asked Elvis a couple of months ago if the Beatles bugged him, and he said not at all. He was very happy about the whole thing. I'd like to ask what kind of opinion the boys got on Elvis.
What opinion do the Beatles have of Elvis Presley?
We've got all his early records.
It's not a joke.
It's true.
No collars and the black trim and all that.
So this is your round jackets. They're in the wardrobe in mothballs. Yes.
I want to ask the Beatles what they think of Barry Goldwater. What do you think of it, John?
I don't know. Well, you can't close it. Do you want to tell people? Yes. Unclose it.
I think we better give up and give them what they want, huh? Okay. Ready? Here they are! The Beatles! We would like to say that we want to thank... Wait. We want to thank all of you on behalf of all of the disc jockeys at KRLA for your great participation, and we love every one of you. Believe me, we do. I'd like to say it's been a pleasure working with these fellas and having the fans that we have and made KRLA #1 in the past few months. I think we better give up and give them what they want, huh? Okay. Ready? Here they are! The Beatles!
At the Beatles' Hollywood Bowl show, producer George Martin records the concert for a possible live album. But after listening to the tapes, he decides the quality isn't quite good enough for a release. So those master tapes are going to sit in storage for another dozen years until 1977, when, combined with the recordings of the show the next year in 1965, they're finally released as the Beatles Live at the Hollywood Bowl, their only official live album, which to date has never been issued on CD or in digital form.
After the concert, the staff uses a limo as a decoy while putting the Beatles in a Dodge Dart so they can escape their fans unnoticed.
This is the home at 356 St. Pierre Road in Bel Air where the Beatles are living during their stay in Los Angeles. The gates are chained and padlocked to protect the privacy of the mop-haired quartet from Britain. It's reported the home has been leased to them so that they can have some privacy. The location was supposed to be secret, but it has been found out by a number of the teenagers, and we also managed to locate it. It wasn't easy to find the place, but we managed to by following the trail of teenagers leading up the hill here. This is Derek Taylor, press officer for the Beatles. Mr. Taylor, what's it like living in a state of virtual siege like this?
I don't know what it would be like not to. It's part of life now. The screams are sort of like a background now, like birds in the trees, you know? They're just there all the time.
Has staying in this house here given the Beatles any opportunity to relax and get some peace and quiet?
Oh, yes, this is the best holiday. I say holiday, it's 24 hours. They're working holiday they've had since they were in Miami, when they had a yacht. Mainly, you see, they're imprisoned in a hotel room. And they see nothing except what they see out of the window. And then, very often, the curtains are drawn.
What have they been doing while staying up here?
Swimming and reading, smoking, drinking orange juice, a little scotch. And well, the main thing has been they've been able to wander around, you see. They've been able to walk to and fro. And they've had space not to go to and fro across the carpet. They can walk around the garden until the kids came this morning and took up a stand on the wall.
Although police have ordered the kids to leave, some have found vantage points and are staying, hoping to catch a sight of their beloved idols. You got pictures of the Beatles?
Yeah, I jumped over the fence.
And you knew that they were here by the fact that some of your peers, other kids, were up here, right?
Yeah, they told us.
So that was your clue?
Yeah.
You glad you saw them?
Yeah, I wish I could see them come out, though. I wanted to get another picture of them.
Why do you want to see them so badly? What is it about them that attracts you so?
Oh, I don't know. They're cute and have good voices, and I don't know. I wanted to go swimming with them, though. I wish I could have.
Do you ever suffer getting trampled or Lost in the shuffle?
We sometimes get lost. We rarely get trampled because we don't allow ourselves to be trampled. We get knocked about a bit by the police sometimes, by doormen and gatemen, because they have to be zealous. They don't know us, you see. They know the Beatles, but they don't know the people around them. We've been kicked by Dutch police and truncheoned by the Hong Kong police.
So this is one of the occupational hazards of your job, I take it.
Yes, and like everything else, we'd miss it if it stopped, you know.
A couple of miles away on Avondale Avenue in Brentwood, the streets are barricaded on either side of the home where the Beatles are to entertain this afternoon. But once again, the teenagers have somehow found out where their idols are going to be, and they're here. The party is being given by record company executive Alan Livingston. It's a charity benefit for the Hemophilia Foundation. Show business personalities are paying $25 apiece, so their children can meet the Beatles, shake hands with them, and have their pictures taken with their idols.
What do you want? Oh, well, what are you going to do in there, Groucho? Are you going in to listen to Beatles? I'm going in and get drunk. You wouldn't dare. Are you really? Of course I am. Brought the charming family with you? Whenever I can get a free drink, I'll go anywhere. You bet your life. Yeah. That's a very funny one.
The police struggle to hold the lines back to keep the crowd in order. It's not a simple job. The men have been chosen for their burliness here. They're having a tough time holding the kids in line.
Yeah, I know.
Beatlemania, the cause of the teenager in 1964.
I don't know what it'll be like when it's all over in the years to come, but it's been very good while it's been on.
I see. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Scott Riegel. I'm a singer-songwriter, and my new album, Wait Till Something Hits You, is available on iTunes and Bandcamp. I've been a Beatles fan since I was about 9 years old. Like a huge Beatles fan, that's when I really started listening to their albums. My favorite Beatles album is Revolver, although White Album does tend to replace that sometimes. Why do I like the Beatles? You can't really not like the Beatles, to be honest. Like, no matter what kind of music you like, they're so influential in so many different directions that you can't listen to most music without finding a hint of something that the Beatles have contributed there. You know, they're the Beatles. They're the most influential band of all time.
You start crying when you hear my name. I'm just sitting here, racking the points up, playing my favorite game. I'm just sitting here, racking the points up, playing my favorite game. I'm just sitting here, racking the points up, playing my favorite game.
If you are a part of the pop culture of the 20th and 21st centuries, you cannot ignore the Beatles. That's basically it. They're a massive force that cannot be stopped.
The Beatles' North American tour continues. Stop number 6, it's Red Rocks in Denver, then off to Cincinnati, Forest Hill Stadium in New York, and Atlantic City for stop number 10. Catch the Beatles while you can. It's the North American tour.
So they had a jam-packed 1964 up to the time they came to America, back to America the second time in August. They were going to play 31 days, 32 shows in 24 different cities.
Yep.
That's a constant. I don't think that they knew what city they were in.
They couldn't have. And as a touring musician, you do lose sight of that sometimes. You're so much of your time is consumed with just getting from point A to point B. But imagine being in that band and everybody and their relatives trying to get at you 24 hours a day. I mean, when do you sleep? When do you have any kind of peace? So it's amazing that through all the footage that you see that they maintain any kind of sanity. Like somebody, maybe it was George in the anthology mentioned that they felt like they were at the eye of the hurricane because it was calm. Whatever room they could get into, be alone, it was calm. Every place else was just nuts.
Every city on the tour was kind of cookie cutter in a way. Mm-hmm. They land. The kids are screaming at the airport. They're running over to the hotel. There's chaos in the streets. The Beatles work their way into the hotel. Mm-hmm. You know, they do a press conference. They have to find a way, to the venue. They're screaming in craziness at the venue. They play. They have to make their way back to the airport or back to the hotel. It was just total chaos everywhere they went. And to do that for 31 days and 32 shows in 24 cities.
Yeah. And have these bubbly, bright up personalities and put on these amazing shows. And there's a lot of course, bootleg recordings that have circulated over the years, or the 1/64 Hollywood Bowl concert, where they sound amazing. Considering at the time, no monitors.
Yeah.
Very little PA equipment.
Well, that's another thing. The PA equipment relative today.
Yeah, of course.
It's they used often the PA system of the venue they were at.
The public address system, like
exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. That's what they're singing.
They had the little Vox amps and whatever they had, but
and Vox kept coming up with higher wattage amps. You see behind me, there's an AC30. Then they came up with the AC50. Then the Beatle special that was 100 watts.
Yeah.
But to try to keep up with the volume.
The equipment.
Yeah. Well, the whole touring industry was in its infancy, because nobody had done it on this scale. Whereas there'd been kind of packagey tours. When you think about a tour back in Buddy Holly's day, there would have been the Everly Brothers and maybe 10 acts, but they all get out and do their 2-3 songs, and that's it. So the Beatles were out in a package tour, but they're doing 35 minutes. Mm-hmm. Or as Ringo would say, if they couldn't hear, they just play faster, so it'd be over quicker.
The Beatles come on, and they never ever played more than 30 minutes.
Yeah, that was pretty much
25 to 30 minutes, maybe 32 minutes. They only played 11, 12 songs at the most ever. The ticket prices, prices were only $4 to see 5 groups, including the Beatles.
Yeah. It was just kind of being invented. They were clearly the first to be playing the arenas.
Yeah, they were.
With very little besides their energy and very little amplification to get it out there. That's why most people the people that were actually at these concerts back in the day, they usually said they couldn't hear the band because the screams were coming so loud. Yeah. They liken it to being standing in front of a jet engine.
Right. Dutch hooligans. There he is. Fish eyes, fish eyes. Go away with you, fish eyes. Fish eyes, not allowed. No good. Fish eyes, bad fish eyes. Fish eyes. You normally get what? The elevator. You jumped in the lift and weighed it down. Is that what it was? Yeah. Are you mad at the press? No. Never mad at the press. We got the impression you might be a little rude, or upset. Did you have a bad trip? We're only as rude as the people we meet. Well, that's true. Well, you certainly had no occasion to be rude, did you, John? I didn't even see, actually. No, well, somebody made a remark in the back of the elevator. Yeah, well, the thing is, the lift was crowded anyway, and then the press time jumped in. Let me ask you both this. Have you ever tried to come into a city, say, unannounced, rather than cause all this fury? Yeah, George and I passed through Los Angeles on the way back from a holiday to easy, unannounced. Only the Pan Am people or somebody knew the plane people, so I go and get it. And we just did a sort of trip round, but we had about 4 hours to spend. We just went round to LA and nobody knew us all. A couple of people spotted us, but they thought we were fake.
So how's your tour been so far? Did you go from here to where?
I don't know where we go next. Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. You enjoyed everything so far? Now, you have this crowd wherever you go?
Up to now, yeah.
Up to now.
Even in the lift.
Anybody been hurt?
A few people have fainted. I don't think there's anything really serious.
Nothing at all.
We haven't heard about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Pat Murphy, Silver News.
The snow, the fire in your embrace, and the times we share, just the little things.
Happening in the 50s with Ed Sullivan into the 60s, that was the main show that everybody watched for all their entertainment, and the new bands got broken on that show. When Ed Sullivan put Elvis on, that was 1956, and his drummer was a great drummer named DJ Fontana. And DJ was coming from the swing jazz background, and DJ found himself in the middle of the birth of rock and roll. And he was going back and forth from a swing feel and attitude to a strong, heavy backbeat. So he would switch grips. You see him on Ed Sullivan in some of those clips playing like this and then playing like this. And he was in the middle of that transition. He was the drummer that represented that transition to millions of people. So then when the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show in February of '64, and everybody saw Ringo, as compared to DJ. DJ was on the floor behind Elvis, pretty much hidden. You couldn't see him very well. It was all about Elvis, and he had a backup band. Then when the Beatles came on, this was a whole other situation. Now the drummer is on a riser that's about 5 feet up, and he's towering over these other 3 musicians that are in front of him. And immediately you realize this drummer is an equal. This is a band. This isn't a Starr with some backing musicians. This drummer is an equal part of this band, and he's really got something to say, and look how great it is. He's up on this pedestal. And Ringo is playing not back and forth, but Ringo has embraced holding both sticks with the match grip, because this is hard rock and roll, and he's got to lay this beat down. And there was no forgiveness, there was no apologies. It was, let's go for it. And he's smiling and grinning, having a great time. Obviously, that hair's flying, and he's sloshing around on those cymbals and crashing, and he was just a visual feast. And immediately the next day, thousands of people decided they wanted to play the drums. The point is that Ringo in one night changed the way drummers approach the instrument. Because of his attitude, the way he held the sticks, the fact that he was up in the air on this pedestal and was clearly an equal to the rest of the musicians and was an important part of this whole package. So Ringo's presence was just, it was really staggering.
Of bread and stone and snails over each and every face, it's true. Curses from the sugar spice, misdirected sacrifice for you.
They were staying in New York City on Park Avenue at the Delmonico Hotel.
Okay.
Now, Delmonico accepted the Beatles. The Beatles, most other hotels in New York City didn't want to touch them.
They didn't want that.
Because they remembered in February what happened at the Plaza.
Right.
All the kids and all the chaos. They didn't want anything to do with it. Well, the only reason Delmonico accepted the Beatles was because they had a very famous resident who actually lived there. Wasn't renting a room, he actually had a home there, named Ed Sullivan. So Ed Sullivan ran interference for them to get into the Delmonicos.
Well, I've seen them on the Ed Sullivan show very often. You know, Mr. Sullivan lives here. He's lived here for many, many years. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they had indicated originally their desire to come to Delmonico's.
What do you think about the Beatles?
Well, I can't understand it all. It amazes me, and I asked a couple of youngsters out here today, I says, how about Elvis Presley? And, they're not interested in Presley anymore, or any of the American rock and rollers, but Beatles all the way. Well, nobody but the Beatles.
What has been the reaction of the staff, to your staff, to the fact that they were here and any untoward incidents?
Well, strangely enough, we have an aged maid. She's been here many, many years, and she's rather an austere sort of person, but nevertheless she expressed herself yesterday how much she loved to see the Beatles. I was rather surprised. I didn't think that she being Irish, too, and these lads being British, nevertheless she liked very, very much to see them.
Were there any reactions from the other guests?
No, the other guests, I think, were rather overjoyed. I mean, these individuals, they have this unusual appeal which everyone, even regardless of age, they just seem to like them. There's something intriguing about them.
What do you think of the Beatles?
I kind of think they're great.
Do you really?
I really do, and I've seen their picture, and I enjoyed their picture very much. In fact, I thought it was going to be so-so, but I was extremely pleased with it, believe it or not. My daughter's here tonight watching. I really traveled. I brought 16 children here tonight. A couple of mothers and I.
What do you think of their haircuts?
Pardon?
What do you think of their haircuts?
Oh, I can't see anything. I don't see anything wrong. I mean, it's something new. I had my likes, too, so why should I deprive my daughter of that?
last night.
I think they're kind of wonderful.
Okay.
That's what I call a poop.
I think they're kind of wonderful.
Okay. What was your reaction when you first found out that the Beatles were going to be appearing in your stadium?
Terrific. Although having been the father of 3 young sons, why I realized it was something that had to be almost, if we could possibly arrange it.
Did you see the performance?
I saw them both evenings.
What did you think of them musically?
I couldn't hear a note. As a matter of fact, I think that we were saved a considerable amount of difficulty getting them to and from New York due to the fact that we brought them in by helicopter. And this permitted all the people that were present at the performance to see them arrive and also to see them depart.
What do you think of their music? Do you buy their records?
Yeah, I like their music. I think it's a different kind, yet it's a kind that you can dance to and you like to listen to, and it's a good listening music to my ears, I guess. Although Friday night when I went, I couldn't hear anything but screaming. Most people said that, too. So.
It's just me and you. Everyone has gone. Everyone has gone. Everyone has gone. Gone back home. Sunbeams climb the wall. Where has the time gone to? Let's have another one.
What do you think of the Beatles, Owen?
Well, I don't think you put that on television. I've been 30 years groundskeeper here and I have all kinds of problems, but I haven't come up with any fungicide or insecticide for the Beatles yet. It's my first time with these fellas and they've left me quite a mess.
Did you go to the performance last night?
Well, I was here. I was on duty all night.
What do you think of their music?
Well, I tell you this, I couldn't hear much of it with the kids screaming. I couldn't hear nothing. To be frank with you.
Have you ever seen a mess like this at the tennis club before?
No, sir. I never saw anything like this before. I hope I'll never see it again.
You're not looking forward then to them coming back?
Not before the Nationals. If they give me a month or so in between, fine, but not 3 days before the Nationals.
What is this, all these jelly beans going to do to your grass out here?
Well, I may have the best course in the world, but I sure got the sweetest right now.
When John and Paul met, they actually had a lot in common as far as what they were listening to. They were both into Chuck Berry, Little Richard. They were huge Buddy Holly fans. They both worshipped Elvis. Fats Domino, they loved Fats Domino. The Everly Brothers, they were huge Everly Brothers fans. And in fact, it's really the Everly Brothers that really can be cited as a huge influence on them harmonically. John and Paul would work on Everly Brothers harmonies together in John's front room there at the house on Menlove Avenue. And that's really where they honed their skills of singing so precisely in such tight harmony together. That's really where that came from. They had a lot in common as far as their musical influences were concerned. They were really listening to the same things at the same time. And once they got together, they saw that musical kinship, and that's part of what fused them together as musicians and as friends. George was a huge Carl Perkins fan, and that's where his main guitar influence came from, was from Carl Perkins. But yes, he was listening to exactly the same things. All the Liverpool kids were listening to that stuff at the time. And actually, all those kids in Liverpool were very fortunate. They were in the prime place to be listening to all of these things, because all of these American records were being bought up by all of these sailors on the Cunard line from the White Star Line, which was there in Liverpool. These sailors would go over to New York. They'd buy up all of these rock and roll singles that were popular at the time. So here's all these kids in Liverpool getting access to all these rock and roll records that nobody else could get. So they were in the right place at the right time to be hearing all this new music. Hayley Mills was a teen idol in the late 50s and early 60s. She was an actress. She also sang in some of her films. She sang a song in her 1961 film, The Parent Trap, called Let's Get Together, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And I always wondered, since Paul McCartney was a Hayley Mills fan as a teenager, did he possibly get the influence for She Loves You, Yeah, 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 from that Hayley Mills song? And sure enough, a few years ago, somebody posed that question to Ringo Starr, and he confirmed that, yes, as far as he knew, Paul McCartney was a Hayley Mills fan, and that, yes, the Yeah, Yeah, Yeah and She Loves You does come from the Hayley Mills song, Let's Get Together, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. Let's get together, yeah, yeah, yeah.
John, when they stormed the stage last night at Forest Hills, I'm sure that's happened to you before. Do you ever get worried that they might get through?
No, I always have hysterics when they get on stage, because the one last night got George, and I could hear all wrong notes coming out. He was trying to carry on playing, the girl hanging around his neck. It was funny.
You ever get frightened at any of these experiences on stage, or when you're being pursued, let's say?
Not really. We get battered mostly by people trying to guard us. They get in the way half the time. They're always grabbing us and shoving us in the wrong thing. But on stage, I always feel safe even when they break through. I don't know, it must be some kind of, I just feel as though I'm all right when I'm plugged in, and I don't feel as though they're getting me.
John, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Hello, this is John Lennon saying hi to everybody in Miami. Sorry we're not coming to see you this time, but we'll see you next time. Keep swimming.
Paul, we've been traveling with you. Do you find the tour tiring so far?
No, all tours are a bit tiring anyway, because they're tours, But this one is no more tiring than any others. In fact, We're having a great time.
September 21st, the end of this American tour. Now, what do you do when you get back to London?
Well, I think we've got about 2 weeks in which there's nothing really fixed, but we've got to do a lot of recording. And actually, John and I have got to do a lot of writing, too, of songs. For records, generally, you know, but we haven't written many yet.
You know, at every news conference that we've been to, it seems always the question of how much money do you make comes up. Now, do you and John make considerably more than Ringo and George would make?
Well, on the songs, you know, we do. But actually, they make up for it in other things. I mean, you know, George does little things like he does a column in an English newspaper, and he gets quite a bit of money for that. Actually, really, none of us know how much money we're making. It's true, you know, if we want to buy something, like I want to get a car, I have to go to our accountant and say, gee, sir, can I afford a car? And, you know, if he says, yes, you're all right, you can get a car, well, that's okay by me.
All of that money, and you've still got to get permission from somebody else.
Well, actually, you know, I keep saying all that money, but I don't know how much the government's got. I'm sure the government's collected quite a healthy slice.
Today, even the youngest generation of musicians are affected by the Beatles in style, songwriting, and the willingness to always try something new.
Hi, I am Griffin Tucker. I am 10 years old. I've loved the Beatles since I was 3. George, he was quiet like me. He wrote beautiful songs, and he was an amazing guitar player. And Ringo, I learned to play by watching him at 6. And John, he made me laugh so hard. Paul was my first, well, only concert so far at Cowboy Stadium in 2009. And I am in a Beatles tribute band. And that's it. I love the Beatles.
The Beatles' big North American tour continues. The next 5 days find the Beatles in Indianapolis at the State Fair Coliseum, the Auditorium in Milwaukee on Friday. Saturday, Chicago's the date at the International Amphitheater, then off to the Olympia Stadium in Detroit, and then Toronto on Monday.
For the American tour, they had 4 opening acts. The Exciters, the Righteous Brothers, Jackie DeShannon, and Bill Black combo. You know, we've heard about Jackie DeShannon and the Righteous Brothers, but it struck me that at the time, they really didn't have very many hits that we knew that they became famous for later. In 1964, Righteous Brothers had I think Latin Loopy Lou was in 62.
Love and
was like
Feelin' was
one,
65, right?
You've Lost That Love and Feelin' and Ebb Tide and you know, Unchained Melody, all those came 65, 66. So the Righteous Brothers were not that well known. Jackie DeShannon hadn't even had
What the World Needs Now.
What the World Needs Now, or Put a Little Love in Your Heart. Those are much later.
60s,
So, although they had some modestly charting type songs, then you had the Exciters. They were a black girl group that added a male member, you know, like 63. They had a song in late 62 called Tell 'Em, and I remember that song real well, but they were one-hit wonder. So, and then Bill Black combo. Bill Black, of course, was Scotty Moore, was Elvis's early backup guy, right. And in the late 50s he started the Bill Black combo, but then he got very ill. In fact, Bill Black wasn't even on the Beatles tour. He passed away in 1965, so he was only, he was too ill the last 2 or 3 years of his life to do much performing, and he was not on the tour with them.
Right.
But now the Righteous Brothers particularly, I think they thought that they were big news. But they were big news on the West Coast. Well, that's great when you're in San Francisco and LA, and as the tour moved eastward, people really didn't receive them very well because they hadn't heard about them. Their fan base was basically on the West Coast, and they hadn't again had their big hits yet.
Right.
So they were in Denver. The crowd wasn't reacting to them. They were starting to get a little bit miffed about that, so they just. They were kind of biding their time. But then what happened is at Forest Hills, there was one incident that kind of broke the camel's back. The Beatles were in Midtown Manhattan, and they were Norman Weiss, who was head of GAC, who was helped organize the tour, was trying to figure out how to get the Beatles out of Manhattan into, outside of New York City, where the Forest Hills tennis court was.
Okay.
So they took them to the Wall Street heliport, and they were going to fly them out there while the show's in progress with the opening acts. So when they finally arrived at Forest Hills, here's the helicopter coming in. Of course, kids looking up, there's the Beatles.
They know what's up, right?
Who's on stage at the time?
Oh,
It's the
here we
Righteous
go.
Brothers.
Oh, no.
Nobody cared what these guys are saying. So they were miffed. I mean, the Beatles landed during their set. The kids were no more paying attention to what was going on stage.
Sure.
And so the next night, after the second night at Forest Hills, the Righteous Brothers quit the tour. Wow. They left. And then they picked up a New Orleans R&B guy named Clarence Frogman Henry.
Wow, yeah.
Who had a song in '56.
Yeah.
That was called I Ain't Got No Home. Okay. And he had a frog voice in part of the song, so he was Frogman Henry. And he was, but again, kind of a one-hit wonder.
Right.
But he took up the slack when the Righteous Brothers left, and he played 18 dates with them from Forest Hills until the end.
Yeah.
So there were actually 5 groups that were opening acts, but only 4 at a time.
A lot of British bands at the time were heavily influenced by American blues. The Beatles, along with the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, a lot of groups at that time, the Yardbirds especially, heavily influenced by the blues that they were hearing from America, folks like Big Bill Broonzy. A good example of that is the song You Can't Do That, which of course the Beatles performed on the American '64 tour. That song has got a basic blues progression in it. The song itself goes like this. I got something to say that might cause you pain. If I catch you talking to that boy again, I'm gonna let you down and leave you flat. Because I told you before, oh, you can't do that. So that's sort of the thing that the Beatles have got going, which is very heavily influenced by the blues. You could take that and extrapolate it back to more of a Delta blues type setting, and you'd get something like this. I got something to say that might cause you pain. If I catch you talking to that boy again, I'm gonna let you down and leave you flat. Because I told you before, oh, you can't do that. If you think about it, even the subject matter itself tends to lean towards a blues type situation. My baby done left me sort of thing. So that's a good example of how the blues heavily influenced the Beatles music.
On behalf of all of the State Fair Board and all the good guys from WIFE, may I present the Beatles! At the start of the show, George is playing a 12-string for Twist and Shout, which is odd because
he actually recorded that song and would normally play it on a 6-string guitar. The reason for doing that is that he didn't want to have to take the time to switch to the 12-string for the second song on the set, which is You Can't Do That, which is normally played on the 12-string Rickenbacker. So instead of dealing with a 1 to 2 minute break right after the very first song, they wanted to try to lead straight into the next tune and keep the momentum going. So instead of having to have that break to switch guitars, he's just going to do Twist and Shout on the 12-string instead.
Oh, it's all good fun. Sammy Vito, oh, just sort of sing, shout, anything, you know.
The set list for the tour was chosen very carefully by the band. They wanted to get the best reaction possible from the crowd, so they chose the songs and the song order very carefully. They didn't just choose their favorite songs or anything like that. They chose songs that they knew they would get a big response with. The set list was chosen based on their years of experience in putting together shows in Hamburg and in Liverpool. They had lots of experience in how to put together a set that would really galvanize and energize the crowd. It was a concerted effort to get the crowd to go along with them on this emotional roller coaster, if you will, that would then lead up to this huge crescendo at the end.
Everybody told me so. Everybody love. No, 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 no. Say I don't see no diamond ring, and I'll be satisfied. Tell me that you want the kind of thing that money just can't buy. But I don't get you.
Larry Kane was a radio journalist who was hired by Brian Epstein to travel with the boys on this American tour and report back his experiences. He later wrote a book about these experiences called Ticket to Ride, and in it he does make reference about a young boy at the Indianapolis show that he ran into in front of the stage. He writes, "One vivid image I'll never forget is of an ice cream vendor who stopped in place, stared at the Beatles on stage in front of the grandstand, and started crying. I said to him, 'Is something wrong?' He replied, 'No, their music just makes me very happy.'"
'Cause I don't care too much for money. Money can buy me love, and buy me love. Love, buy me love.
Ringo is having to sing into a microphone as he sings the song Boys. They've got the mic on a straight mic stand, and he's having to place that right in the middle of his drum kit, right there between his legs. Kind of makes it difficult to play your drum kit properly. Of course, nowadays we would have what's called a boom stand, which allows the microphone to be suspended right there where your head is, and yet you could play the rest of the drum kit unencumbered.
Talk about boys. Yeah, yeah, boys. What about the show? Thank you. Thank you, Ringo. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ringo.
Well, as we mentioned, when they were in America for the first time in February of '64, I forget which hotel where this meeting happened, but the very enterprising folks at Rickenbacker Guitars decided to bring along a bunch of their new guitars to see if they could get the Beatles to play them. And apparently one of those guitars was a Rickenbacker 12-string, which figured in largely to the Beatles' subsequent recordings as they went back to England right after that. This is a 1966 Rickenbacker 330, so very similar to The one George that gravitated towards was the 360, which is essentially the same guitar with this more ornate binding. But they went back to England, as Mark pointed out. They started working on the Hard Day's Night. So it's hard to imagine Hard Day's Night without that classic, Rickenbacker 12-string sound, or you can't do that. Very signature to that early to mid '64 Beatles sound. And then George proceeded to bring it along with him when they toured the States. And you can hear it in evidence on the Hollywood Bowl recordings when they open up with Twist and Shout. That's their first song. But you hear George playing it on the 12-string. Which would have been different than the original '63 recording, which was just his normal, probably a Gretsch or one of his solid body Rickenbackers. So yeah, he played this guitar on that whole '64 tour. And so you'd hear it on some non-12-string recordings like Twist and Shout and a few others, but then the second song was You Can't Do That. So that's why he came on, and so Twist and Shout right into You Can't Do That. Then of course he got to use it on the on Hard Day's Night, which would have been a new single at that point, right?
Yeah, very.
So a very, very new single. Or when John says, we'd like to do an old song some of you older people might remember from last year. It's called She Loves You. From last year. Yeah, here's one of our old songs from last year. It's an oldie.
An oldie.
Yeah.
The guitar you have, right? I should say the guitar you're playing has 12 strings. Now, before the song If I Fell, during the act, you changed guitars. What is the reason behind this?
Because it's got a different sound, you see. With the 12 strings, it's 2 sets of each. I mean, there's 2 lots of each string, you see. Only instead of it being tuned the same, they're in octaves, you see. So instead of getting this note, like you would on an old one, you get, and both together, so it gives you that noise, you see. It's a higher sound, and with it being electric, it's a good sound. And so the ones I've used, when I've used this on a record, I use it on stage as well, you see. That's why I'm always swapping around.
So George would have had this guitar, and he would have also had an early Gretsch Tennessean, which he recorded a lot in '64 with, like Babies in Black, that type of thing. But he would have played his rollover Beethoven type things on that guitar through an amp very like this, '64 AC30. Well, that was at least at the Washington show.
Absolutely.
By the tour, were they upgraded to the 50-watt amps, maybe? I think they might have been playing through the piggyback on the aluminum cart. Because Vox kept inventing and coming up with higher wattage amps because the Beatles couldn't hear, nor could the fans, so they kept coming up with higher wattage. There was the 50-watt AC50, and then they came up with an amp called the Super Beatle eventually, which was 100-watt. Tube at first, and then solid state. They thought solid state might be more consistent, but as a lot of tube fanatics will tell you, not quite as musical. But anyway, this guitar kind of epitomizes the Beatles in 1964. That jangly kind of sound, which they eventually used on. I'll work on tuning later.
She waved goodbye. He tried and tried to keep it all locked up inside and to just go on with his life. But midnight brings confusion and the doubt. He has to let it go or let it out. And that's why God made tears, created them to fall when we have lost it all. And that's why God made tears, the wounds that run so deep, the scars that never heal, That's why God makes you. Through lovers' eyes, they say that love is blind. She seems so right. I guess you never know. He made her laugh and brought her flowers and held her through her darkest hours. She turned away, said he should keep in touch. She had to go, 'cause she was in a rush.
We have two young ladies with us, and what's your name?
Linda Williams,
Where are you from?
North Hollywood.
And who is your favorite Beatle personality?
John Lennon.
Why?
Because John Lennon and I were destined for each other from the day I was born and from the day he was born.
Why?
Why? Because we both have the same sense of humor. I know if he saw me, the minute he saw me, he would be unmercifully attracted to me, just as I am to him.
There are some youngsters who do aim this at you. A tremendous compassion and admiration for the Beatles in terms of a young lady feeling as though, even though she's never met the Beatles, feeling as though she's married to one of them, or feeling as though she has this personal connection. And I saw some very explicit examples of this lately. Do you think this is going a little bit too far, maybe?
I don't know. If they weren't sort of thinking or doing things connected with us, it'd be about something else. So I don't really think it's going too far. You know, there are people who are slightly nutcases, as I call them.
So as the Beatles were cutting their teeth as musicians in places like Liverpool and Hamburg, they were doing a lot of early R&B at the time, which once again was heavily influenced by the blues. Things like Chuck Berry's Roll Over Beethoven, which once again they were doing on the '64 tour, which is basically Chuck Berry's version of the blues, where he's going, gonna write a little letter, gonna mail it to my local DJ. It's got that same blues bent, the same progression. Roll over Beethoven, gotta hit it again today. So it's the same sort of blues thing, just Chuck Berry's version of it. But at the same time, they were growing and progressing as musicians and were starting to grasp things that were a little more complex chordally. For example, at the time, A Hard Day's Night would have been a brand new song for them. And they did do that on the '64 tour as well. And just the opening chord itself, which this is just a single guitar version of it. There's actually 3 guitars and a bass and all sorts of stuff making that first chord on the recording. But a single guitar version of it might sound like... And the moment you hear that chord, it just galvanizes you and makes you go, oh, this is going to be awesome. So that's sort of how advanced they were getting. And in fact, another new song for them at the time, which was also on the Hard Day's Night soundtrack, was If I Fell. And just the chord progression at the beginning of that song alone shows you how advanced they were getting chordally and melodically. Lennon starts off that song, if I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand? 'Cause I've been in love before and I found that love was more than just holding hands. And if you listen to that and really analyze it, there's so much going on there melodically and chordally that is just not in your standard blues-based riff. There's a lot going on there that are really lofty concepts for these guys who were raised on American rock and roll.
With our band, what we've been trying to do is just to kind of write straight-up pop songs. And I read something that John Lennon said in the, like 1963 or 64, right around that tour, the American tour, that he wasn't putting a lot of thought into the songs. He was just trying to, the Everly Brothers were writing poppy songs and Buddy Holly, and they were just trying to write some pop songs. But it turns out that the Beatles write the perfect pop song, and they did it over and over and over and over again, album after album after album, and it was crazy.
I Want to Hold Your Hand, I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's arguably the greatest pop song that's ever been written in the history of the world. It makes sense why all the girls were flipping their lids, right? I mean, it's like who doesn't love that song? You got to be crazy not to like that song.
It would have been cool for maybe 1.5 weeks to be playing your show and you couldn't hear the music because the girls were screaming so loud. But I guess that would get old when you're actually trying to play the songs. I don't know. I lose my mind about girls, so maybe I would love that for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made it this far, 4 years as the O's, with not being able to hear ourselves over the screaming girls, just like the Beatles. Some say the O's are just like the Beatles.
Yeah.
The next week is going to be a big one for the Beatles as they continue their North American tour. Last night they played the Forum in Montreal. Then, weather permitting, Hurricane Dora permitting, they're going to take some days off before playing the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville on Friday. Then back up north to Boston, to the Boston Gardens. The Civic Center in Baltimore is their home on Sunday, and the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh on Monday the 14th, as the Beatles' North American tour continues.
Well, win. There you go. He's so fair. Nice place you got here.
Do you plan to have another movie in the near future?
Yes. We started in February. We don't know what it's going to be about yet.
Do the boys honestly believe that they will continue in this vein, making the wonderful money they are, and with all these performances, or will they fade like the miniature golf courses of a few years ago?
You're picking on my side.
Probably will, but we'll get out before we play. We make more money than miniature golf courses.
Last Thursday night, the Beatles were in town and packed our show out there with over 14,000 children, a great majority being girls. Now, these are the youngsters from the better homes, because the underprivileged cannot afford $5 a seat, and the reservations were made last April. Some of the parents were there, most of them were not. The youngsters came there to see the Beatles. Now, this court is not a prude, but the question is, can you take 14,000 children and pack them in to one stadium? And they know they're coming there to get hysterical. And the whole show was based upon producing hysteria.
You were coming out of this period of the early 60s with the teen idols, the Bobbies. Right. Bobby Rydell, all the, what were some of the other?
The Frankie
Avalon and the Bobby Rydell type of groups and type of singers, Fabian, and then you got into, of course, the Beach Boys were about as big as you could get in '63.
They were huge, and Roy Orbison,
and certainly unique. Everybody had that Kingston Trio crew cut, hair parted type of look. When the Beatles hit the Sullivan Show and they came over. Yeah. And I mean, they broke through and opened up the wave of, of course, the British Invasion, all the other bands. They literally opened the door. But part of that, besides the music, was the look. Yeah. The hair.
Very much so. Yeah, the hair was a major thing.
Sir, as a barber in Denver, can you give me some comment on how the Beatles have affected the barber business in this town?
Well, I think they've hurt the barber business. They wait so long to get their haircut. Sometimes some of them look like they haven't had their haircut in a year or 2 years. And the teenagers in this town, they all seem to want to pattern themselves after these Beatles, and consequently they are hurting us barbers. Pretty bad. I'd like to give them free haircuts.
What do you think of the Beatles?
I don't like them.
What is it that you don't like about them?
Oh, they came in with that long hair, and it's just kind of ridiculous. And my girlfriend was kind of excited about them. She was paying more attention to them than she was to me.
I kind of got a little jealous, I guess.
How do you like the way they look?
Well, they're ridiculous. I mean, they'd be off the wall in any place they go. I mean, they might not be allowed in half of these places, only if they, you know, they're known as the Beatles.
What do you think about the way they wear high-heel shoes and...
Well, I'll tell you something. If I didn't know them for being boys, I would think they're a little girlish, you know? Their hair there. I mean, in this country, we might call them gay.
And then these girls went into a coma. They ranted. They fainted. Their eyes were glassy. Some pulled their hair out. Some tore their dresses. They threw notes of a very undesirable nature on the stage. Some girls, after the performance, kissed the stage, and some went up and kissed the very seats in which the Beatles had sat. And with this, one father brought a child who was epileptic, and the child had an epileptic fit. And some of the parents took their children home before the show was over because it was, as some people say, unbelievable.
And my parents weren't, you know, they had no real problem with the Beatles, but a lot of parents did. You know,
Yeah,
they were
sure.
anti-establishment, and
well, it was a threat. They were a threat to what had preceded it, being that, you know, your slick back hair, the crew cut, the Pendleton shirts.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
even though they were dressed nicely, thanks to Brian, he packaged them in somewhat of a wholesome way to present, you know, to the world. But with the longer hair, that was the tip of the iceberg, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And the more that they were allowed to kind of be themselves and get out there. But Paul McCartney would later say that they didn't feel like they were the cutting edge of the cultural change, but they were the spokesman.
What do you think of the Beatles?
To tell you the truth, I think they're very ugly, and they have no personality whatsoever as far as I'm concerned. I've never go near any of them, never. Otherwise, they're really ugly, especially when my girlfriend likes George. He's skinny as heck, he's ugly.
What do you think of Ringo?
Ringo, I like him, he's really nice.
What do you like about Ringo?
I like his nose, to tell you the truth. It adds something to him.
Did you go down and hear him in Forest Hills?
No, I would never go down all the screaming girls, like a bunch of idiots, really they are.
The appearance that the Beatles made.
I think the Beatles, they look like some crazy nuts.
What do you think of their music?
What music?
The music is...
What music? What music? I never heard any music come out of them.
Why?
They just make some kind of noise where I wouldn't call that music.
What do you think of the Beatles?
I don't like them, really.
What don't you like about them?
I think they're just a passing phase now. There's nothing that I like about them. They haven't got voices. They haven't got anything.
But that show has sown certain seeds in these youngsters. And the seeds could be of a physical nature where they could be impaired with it, could be of a mental situation, girls going out on dates, their misconception of what this whole problem is about. And there's so many other factors that come into this that we in the juvenile court have to try to prevent anything of a nature that's going to cause trouble.
What do you as musicians think of the Beatles' music?
Oh, that's what it is. It's music. Oh, I just thought they were moving around a lot, and they just shook their head. I don't think, well, there are rock and roll groups in this town, or in the state anyway, that I would guess to be better than the Beatles as far as music, but none of them have enough hair.
Do you feel that the Beatles have helped music in America?
I really don't think they've helped music at all, but I don't think they intend to help music, and I don't think they come on as musicians as much as they come on with their appeal to youngsters and their demeanor, their dress, their haircuts. I think they're appealing to a psychological side of the youngsters rather than to the musical side.
The only thing I feel the Beatles, I give them credit because they do admit that they're not very good, but that they've got a good gimmick.
What do you think of their music?
Well, as a musician,
you're a musician.
Well, I've been playing trumpet for 22 years, and I don't care too much for their music. As musicians, they're not, but they're probably laughing all the way to the bank.
When the Beatles visit a city, they pose a unique and complex policing problem. First, their patrons are almost entirely young, enthusiastic, and eager girls. Second, these young followers labor the impression that their affection for this strange hairstyled quartet can only be shown by unbridled emotion in terms of vocal outcry and body actions. Containing these young minds in active bodies necessitates mounting a police detail which will protect the spectators from their own devices and secondarily to secure the entertainers from an over-enthusiastic audience. In Cincinnati, this chore required the combined efforts of 110 men, the largest police detail assembled for supervising a single event.
But if you could see how uncontrollable they were, the glassy eyes, the physical and mental condition, you would agree that the show was not good for them.
So the first and second albums had a lot of covers on them because that's what they had been doing up to this time, developing their material in Liverpool and in Hamburg. They were doing a lot of covers. By the third album, they are working on their own compositions at a fevered pace. And in fact, I think the fact that this was to be for a soundtrack album influenced them greatly on developing their own material, because the soundtrack to this was going to be released by United Artists here in the States as a soundtrack album. And in fact, that's the only reason that the film was being made by United Artists, was that they wanted a soundtrack record to sell. Because of this, the Beatles wanted to kind of cash in on that eventuality. And they started working really hard on these songs for the soundtrack record with the intention of having an album that was nothing but Lennon and McCartney compositions. And the fact that, that they did an album that is completely their own material is kind of unprecedented for its time. Even the artists that were hugely influential to the Beatles hadn't really put out a lot of records that were strictly their compositions and no covers. So it was a bit unprecedented for the Beatles to be putting out something that was completely theirs.
It's down to the last days of the Beatles' North American tour. They played the Public Auditorium in Cleveland last night. Tonight, it's the City Park Stadium in New Orleans. Then, Thursday, off to the Municipal Stadium in Kansas City for a special date that's been added here at the last minute. Then Dallas, Memorial Coliseum, officially the last show of the tour. And then a bonus, a farewell show at the Paramount, a special benefit featuring Bobby Goldsboro, the Shangri-Las, Brothers Ford, Jackie DeShannon, and Nancy Ames, the Tokens, Leslie Uggams, and Steve and Edie. But tonight, it all happens in New Orleans at the great big City Park Stadium. 12,000 people can fit into it. Make sure you're there early. The show starts at 8 o'clock. Beatles on stage at around 9:20. Tickets only $5. Don't miss the Beatles in New Orleans tonight.
Spinning around in the peace that you found, up looking down. I know the time was always wasted, unjust desires that you've tasted. Homie, don't play reveille, and it don't make sense
last night in New Orleans, there was quite a scene on the field. You know, everybody was running around. Yeah. The amazing thing to me was watching you up there continue playing, you know, without it ever phasing you. When something like this goes on, and we've already described it to the audience exactly what happened, does it ever affect you? Do you ever look down and get a laugh out of it? Or
Well, last night I was beginning to have hysterics because it got more and more like a football match or a polo match. It was just a scream.
And when you're playing like that, I noticed there was one mic out, too. Have you ever had a case like this before where there was a technical difficulty and you had to use just one microphone?
Oh, we used to do a lot of shows with one microphone. You know, people just couldn't bother setting up microphones. And we're quite used to it. But the microphone kept going off and on, you see, so Paul didn't really know. He was singing half of it with it on, and it would suddenly go off and he wouldn't know till the end of the tune.
One of the things that's a highlight in my mind about the whole trip, aside from meeting and talking with the Beatles and everybody, is the police and the various involvements that occurred, good and bad, especially the one in Cleveland, where the show was stopped. At the moment the show was stopped, when you were playing, and the man walked up on the stage, what was the first thought that ran in your mind, if you can remember?
I felt like kicking him off, you know, because it's so annoying when they come charging on stage, and the way they did just came on and just pushed George and I off the microphone. They didn't say why. Apparently somebody was getting hurt, but we couldn't see anything. You know, nothing was really happening wild. And he just comes on shoving us off and shouting, "Get off this stage!" You know, felt like kicking him when he was a policeman.
November 22nd, 1963, John Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. And of course, the last official stop on the tour, now they had a day off after Dallas. They went to a ranch for the Reed Pigman Ranch. Reed Pigman was the owner of American Flyers. He was the guy that flew them around in this turboprop plane that they were flying. He owned a ranch, so they had a day off, and then they did a charity show at the Paramount in New York. Yeah. Dallas, to me, is really the last true city on the tour. The Beatles were, you know, I understood that the Beatles were terrified to come to Dallas because Kennedy had only been assassinated 10 months earlier.
Yeah, it's fresh on the minds.
Paul, in Dallas, when you get there, LBJ and Barry Goldwater are both going to be appearing the same day at a convention. Would you like to meet them?
Hello, Logan. In Dallas?
In Dallas.
Ooh.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I've heard a lot about that place. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Oh, with the president there, host there. It should be hectic. That's all I can say, wouldn't it?
They fly into Dallas. The motorcade, of course, the motorcade went through Dealey Plaza. Well, so did the Beatles motorcade. Oh. On the way from Love Field to the Cabana. Of course, the Cabana Hotel was right across Stemmons Freeway from Dealey Plaza. So they had to go through Dealey Plaza to get to the hotel. And I guess maybe somebody told them where they were, and John said, "Is it safe?" Wow. He was, you know, a little concerned.
Yeah, sure.
And then at the press conference before the Dallas concert in the basement of, you know, Memorial Auditorium, there was a big campaign at the time, Ringo for president. Okay. So they said, "What do you think about this whole Ringo for president thing?" He's asking Ringo, the reporter is asking Ringo, and Ringo says, "It's great, you got to watch yourself down here."
Oh, man.
And then Lennon, during the same press conference, is asked, you know, do you ever, one of the girls, the young fans in the audience in the press conference said, "Does it ever worry you when you step off of a plane and see a mob, a crowd?" And he goes, "More so here, perhaps."
Oh, wow.
So there were these little undercurrents.
Sure.
George Harrison, when he wrote "I Me Mine" in 1980, he said they were terrified to come to Dallas. And Derek Taylor in 50 Years Adrift in '84 said, they literally thought they were going to be shot. And it didn't reinforce it. He said, and I don't know if this is true, but Derek said that it was, that what reinforced that was that when they got to the companion, he said there were Dallas police sharpshooters on every corner of the building.
Oh my God.
So you're driving in and you're seeing police with rifles. And I mean, they really thought that they were going to die.
Although you haven't seen much of Dallas, the part of it you have seen, what do you like?
Well, pretty fine.
Did you get to see the presidential site?
No, the only bit we've seen so far is the hotel.
On the drive, it looked a nice place when we drove to this place here, whatever this is. Ringo, do you have any political affiliations at all?
No, he doesn't even smoke. I don't even smoke.
Is that what kind of cigarette is that? Is that a roll your own?
It's one of these, but it don't work so well. He said in an American accent.
What kind of girls do you prefer?
My wife.
Your wife. What kind of girl is she?
She's a nice girl.
Nice girl.
Is this to me?
Ringo, when you marry, what kind of girl are you going to...
Oh, I don't know. I haven't sorted one out yet. I like them all.
Yeah, how about that? How about that, eh?
Ain't that very
thank you. What kind of girl do you like?
John's wife.
John's wife?
Totally not.
That's a clown.
Nobody likes a smart aleck.
No, do you all have any books coming out now, anytime soon?
John's the only one. John's the one with the book.
I haven't got one. I've got one coming out next year, I suppose, when I've written it. What's the name of it? I don't know. I haven't written it. A mystery, or what kind of books do you like to write?
Rubbish. Detective one.
Rubbish.
I'm writing a detective.
He's writing it. Last night you had a lot of difficulty getting into the cabana. Did any of you get hurt at all? Joe's got kicked.
I got punched in my face a few times, but I mean that's part of life, isn't it? We're rolling now.
All right.
We're going to move the stage on down to New Orleans.
Yeah. Y'all going to New Orleans tonight?
No, we were there the other night. Very hot there, you know. Very hot. Don't like this cigarette.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you.
By every possible measure, the 1964 tour was an enormous success. But it is worth noting that that type of touring really takes a toll on you, both mentally and physically. Even though they enjoyed the tour, it is important to remember that this sort of touring is very taxing. So much so that within 2 years, they would stop touring altogether. Their last show, of course, being the 1966 show at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. The rigors of touring was not the only reason why they stopped touring. They were also starting to write music that was a little more demanding, that really did not fit within the realm of your typical onstage, 2 guitars, bass and drums type platform. They were starting to look into different types of music, different types of instrumentation. They were using things like string quartets, horn sections, of course George starting to use the sitar. These were all things that they were really wanting to focus on more and more, and were really enjoying their time in the studio, and saw their time in the studio as the place where they were really making their true indelible mark in music in general. That it really wasn't the live performances at all, that those were sort of a sideline to what the real focus was for them, which was the recorded music, the actual songs. And sure enough, those are the pieces that we will take with us forever. It's not the live performance that we're that concerned about anymore. It's the music that they left on vinyl.
We love you, Beatles. I love you, John. You'll be true when you're not here. Ringo, we love you. Beatles, we love you. How do you do in your private zoo? Trapped in cages, emotion rages. How do you do? You're not on the one. You're just the lonely one, yeah. forgotten son. How do you fare? Pain is there. Childhood lost. Look at the cost. How do you fare? You're not the only one. You're just a lonely one. Yeah, my forgotten son. Take the lion's share in your pride.
There's never been anything quite like the success of the Beatles. How long do you think it will last?
Well, this is impossible to say. And it also depends what you term success. I think they're going to be successful, in my estimation, a lot of other people's estimation, for many, many years. But obviously it won't be the same kind of success. It's obviously going to be a matured kind of success.
For four guys to be that talented, that good looking, but that charismatic, I mean, when will it ever happen again? I mean, it's really insane how the chemistry really came together.
It's like, I think we grew up in the age of Mozart in the modern era. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
The timing was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was just nothing like him.
Oh, I love them. They're just fabulous. Last night they were there. Oh, I don't know. It's not that bad like everyone says it is. I just love them. Last night.
Oh, I love the Beatles. It's just great the way they sing, their haircuts, their looks. They're just fabulous. It's the sound. The Beatles sound is just great. The sound is fantastic, and their hair is so different and wild. I love them.
Okay, don't push. Stand back that way. Back.